Thank you so much for spending time with us today for our ORCID US Community Annual Meeting. Please go ahead and feel free to put your name and location in the chat so we know who's here. And we do have a lot to cover today and time is precious, so let's go ahead and get started. So Paolo will be sharing a link to our shared notes document in the chat, which has our agenda and also designated spaces for notes when we move into breakout rooms later in the session. Everyone is muted for now, but when we go into the breakout rooms, you'll be able to unmute and turn your camera on. If you have any questions or comments for now, put them in the chat. If we don't get a chance to answer your question today on the call, we will definitely be following up with you via email to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. So don't worry if we don't get to that on the call today. We will be following up with you if you ask a question in the chat that doesn't get addressed. We will be sharing the slides after the call. We're recording this first part of the meeting, which will be shared after. We will not be recording the breakout rooms. And then also note that automatic captions are available, and so you should be able to turn those on or off in your Zoom controls. Also just want to point out our community code of conduct, which is also linked in our notes document. And basically, this is just a reminder to be respectful and considerate of others, listen as much as you speak, realize that others may have a perspective or knowledge you're unaware of. And we all have valuable contributions to make, whether you're new to ORCID or have been involved for a while. So there are no stupid questions, and everybody is welcome in this space. So our agenda, quickly reviewing this, we're first going to have a presentation about work that we have been doing on ORCID data visualization, which I'm really excited about. Then we'll have a brief presentation for you covering an overview of everything new and upcoming that you need to be aware of as a representative from an ORCID member organization in the US. And these presentations will be recorded, so if you have to leave early, no worries. Then we'll go into breakout rooms and do discussion for about 30 minutes. We're going to have a prize drawing around 2:30, but you have to be present to win. And then there's a kind of an optional open office hours if you want to stay on the call and ask any questions or chat with myself and Paolo. Speaking of myself and Paolo, if you don't know us, I'm Sheila Rabin. I am the program leader for persistent identifier communities at Lyrasis. So that includes our ORCID US community. And we also have a data site consortium for institutions that want to use DOIs. And many of you also already know Paolo Guhilde, who joined us last year in 2021 as our ORCID US community specialist. So we're your ORCID US community staff. We also have some colleagues from ORCID with us on the call today that I want to introduce. So Brian Minahan is our engagement lead at ORCID. Brian is based in Hawaii. And then Shauna Sadler is the manager for outreach and partnerships at ORCID, and Shauna is based in Canada. So these are our colleagues at ORCID that we work with very closely to support all of you. Okay, so let's get into it and let's talk about our ORCID data visualization project. So since 2018, since we started the ORCID US community, I've really been wanting to do some sort of cool data visualization using data from ORCID records in the US, but I never really had time nor the skills to do that on my own. So in July of this year, we started partnering with the Drexel University Leading Program, which stands for Library Information Science Education and Data Science Integrated Network Group. So the Leading Program is a fellowship program that partners with multiple organizations and utilizes the data science expertise at Drexel University to provide doctoral students and early to mid-career professionals with hands-on experience working with data on real projects. So we put in a proposal to have fellows from the Leading Program work on a data visualization project using ORCID data, and our proposal was accepted. So over the summer, we put a call out to the community to solicit ideas on different types of questions that we could ask and answer using data from ORCID and visualizations. And we got a lot of great ideas. So thank you to everyone who submitted those ideas. But the one that stood out the most and that was most doable within our timeline, which is from July through December, so 6 months to work on this project. The question that we settled on was to see if we could visualize collaborations between researchers using data from ORCID records, and also DOI metadata, because all of the persistent identifiers are really intertwined and connected. So the two fellows that we have been working with on this project are Negin Agassi-Bek, the data visualization librarian at University of Washington Libraries, and also Olivia Given-Castello, who's the head of business, social sciences, and education at Temple University Libraries. So Negin and Olivia have spent the last 6 months working with Paolo and I on this project. They created an R script that can be used to find the ORCID IDs of researchers that are affiliated with a single institution, and then pulling publication DOIs from the work section of those ORCID records, and then retrieving collaborator information from those DOIs. And since we started by just looking at publications, we're really focusing only on Crossref DOIs right now. But basically, through that script, the resulting data set can be plugged into a data visualization platform called Tableau to see a visual map of collaborations. And the best part is we're still finishing up this project, but ultimately this can be done for any organization that employs researchers, and we're super excited to have this new visualization tool available. So I'm going to hand it over to Negin and Olivia to tell us more about the project. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome.
And Negin and Olivia, take it away.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Sheila. And thank you and Paolo both for all of the support and mentorship you provided, without which this project would not be nearly as far as it is right now. So I'm just turning off my screen to save a little bit of bandwidth. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So for the next 20 minutes or so, Olivia and I will be going through some of the context and background for this project, as well as how we got to this point and some of our next steps. We'll also share how you can contribute to this project at your own organizations to both improve ORCID adoption and also improve the tools that we'll be showing here. We'll be covering some of the behind the scenes, but the primary takeaways are largely the tools that I mentioned earlier. The main tool is the dashboard that explores the data that we worked with. And in a bit, I'll show you how you can customize the dashboard to look at your own institution's data. On the screen right now, you can see a snippet of the collaborations map for an institution. And again, we'll get to that demo in just a little bit. But first, some context. So our main goal was to visualize collaborations between institutions within a certain time period to look at patterns and trends. One of the most important lessons that we learned is that researcher collaborations are complex and really difficult to define. And I should say this was not really a surprise, but after working with the data, we had a better understanding of the scope and the scale of that complexity. Despite these barriers, though, we found that there was still a lot that we could work with. And so we've pulled data, modified the code, pulled more data, and went through this cycle a few times until we got to a point where we could more easily work with it. From there, we built a dashboard that explores an institution's data. And conceptually, this starts with what we call a home or anchor institution. And from there, we pull data for a specific time period for that institution using both ORCID and Crossref. The data include individual home authors and their collaborators at other institutions based on those collaborators' current institutions. And I'll demonstrate what this looks like in just a minute in case that doesn't quite click yet. I know I hinted at this just a minute ago, but before we look at the dashboard, I want to be really transparent about the data, which are imperfect and contain gaps as well as user and machine errors. The data in the dashboard capture what we can using the data sources we have, and they do give a good view, but the numbers are not absolute, nor are they perfect. All of this work led to a suite of tools that we've created, or that Lyrasis and ORCID have created, and that we've curated into a package. The first one is obviously the dashboard, which, like Sheila mentioned, we've created in a visualization tool called Tableau. Aside from what I'll cover here today, the key takeaway is that it is available to everyone to use and customize, and that you can replace the data in the template dashboard with your own institution's data for the time period of interest to explore collaborations where you are. There is also an R script that creates a network visualization to further explore collaborations through a different lens. And this is aimed at those who are interested in more customized solutions than what the Tableau template can offer. The script is a start and can use more refinement and exploration. So if you're interested in it, we really encourage you to build on it and to reach out to us to let us know what cool things you're doing with it. Then there's the R script that pulls ORCID and DOI data at a specific institution. If you're comfortable with running the script on your own, there's some good documentation embedded in the script to help you do that, or you can reach out to lyricists for help with pulling the data. We also came across already created ORCID outreach materials, and we recommend that you use these materials from ORCID and Lyricist to encourage your users to get and to more fully adopt ORCID profiles. And the dashboard is something that you may want to consider adding to these materials as well as you're doing your outreach. And last but certainly not least, Lyricist is here to support you and supply data for your institution and help with the dashboard. So I'm going to demo the dashboard really quickly and get us going here. This dashboard is currently displaying data for Temple University for the time period 2021 to around the present. The background page includes a lot of the information that we'll cover here today. The most important pieces are the context and considerations for the data, which impact how the data in this dashboard should be used. Also important is the contact information for further support that we'll be including in this section. The summary dashboard contains high-level stats, including the number of article collaborations, the number of collaborating cities, and the number of ORCID ID holders for the specific time period for the data pulled. There's also a bar chart at the bottom that notes the institutions with which Temple has had the highest number of collaborations based on the data for this time period. I want to note here that the color scheme is very neutral because, again, you're able to customize this to fit your own institution. When we share out this dashboard, it will likely contain mock data so that it takes less time to load and so that it's easier to swap out the data. You can navigate between the different sections at the very top by clicking on the buttons, which I'll be demonstrating throughout this video. The collaborations map shows collaborations at the institutional and city levels. You can search for an institution, and if it shows up in the data, it'll show you where that institution is located. For this example, I'll search for a major collaborator of Temple University, which is the University of Pennsylvania. And you'll see that the map zooms in on Philadelphia, which is where UPenn is located. And below it, it lists the institutions that come up when you search for the University of Pennsylvania. One limitation here is that typos, whether on the search end or on the data end, could potentially cause issues in bringing up information, but on the whole, it'll pull back a pretty good idea of collaborations with that institution. Also, if you click on one of these dots, below you'll see the institutions within that city and the number of collaborations with those institutions. This is especially useful if you're interested in diving deeper into the national and global reach of these collaborations. The other thing that you can do here is exclude your own institution from the map. Many researchers at an institution will obviously collaborate with other researchers at that same institution. So if you're more interested in external collaborations, you can filter them out here. The individual search section lets researchers explore their own collaborations by searching with an ORCID ID. I'll show an example here. You can now see this researcher's collaborations. We chose not to search by name, not only because there are cases of names that are not unique, which is really what ORCID is trying to solve here in the first place, but also because we didn't want to make it easy to just look up individuals, especially if they want to lock down their ORCID profiles. It's important to note that this data shouldn't be used to evaluate or compare researchers against one another because, again, the data are not perfect and do not give a full picture of collaborations and impact. This dashboard is just one angle through which to approach this information. However, if a researcher has filled out their ORCID profile fully and feels confident with the information listed here, they can easily take a screenshot or export an image from this dashboard and drop it right into their promotion package or CV or website. Another one of the features that we're excited about is the Why Can't I Find My ORCID ID button. So if someone can't find their ORCID ID, and I'll just put a string here to show this, if someone can't find their ORCID ID, they can come up here and click on the Why Can't I Find My ORCID ID button, and this button takes you to a page that includes steps to take to acquire or clean an ORCID ID so that researchers or the users that you work with are counted in the data. We're hoping that this can be a useful outreach tool to encourage researchers to either adopt or more fully fill out their ORCID profiles. We will likely be adding some more specifics to this page, but these are some of the key issues that can cause someone to not show up in the dashboard. I will also note that we've worked to build in accessibility into this Tableau dashboard in every way that we can, working around Tableau's own limitations. And some of these include adding captions and checking color contrast and using resizable layouts where possible. However, we encourage you to check for accessibility as you customize, especially if you will be changing any of the major visualizations or adding your own branding to the template. All right, well, I hope you'll forgive the lack of a live demo because that would have been the exact moment that Tableau would have gone down. And also there is some buffer time, so that's just something to keep in mind as you're working with the dashboard, especially if you are working at a large institution with a lot of ORCID holders. So I won't really be spending any time on this slide because it's just the main points of the video that I covered except written out, but please feel free to refer to this slide in the video again if you want to revisit it. This is just sort of packaged up in a different way. So like I mentioned earlier, you can actually make this dashboard your own. To do that, first you'll want to reach out to Lyrasis for your institution's collaboration data or run the R script yourself to get that data. Then you'll need to create a Tableau public account, go to the template dashboard and copy it, and then replace the data with your own institution's data. This can usually be done in browser without having to actually install Tableau, and you don't have to be a Tableau expert to do it. Please do keep in mind though that any data saved to Tableau Public is saved on their public server. Even though all of this data is openly available, it's just still something to consider. We'll have more detailed steps in the documentation for the dashboard, which we're still getting together and are hoping to share out in the next month or so. So I'll now pass it off to Olivia, who will talk us through more of the behind the scenes.
Thanks, Nikki. So I'm going to talk about some more details on how the data file of collaborations is actually built. We have an R script that generates a CSV file with a row for every institution, author, and co-author from the DOIs that are retrieved. And then the script tries to fill in ORCID profile information like institutional affiliation and location info for the authors wherever possible. Next slide. The script that generates this file is built on a lot of work by other people, and I just want to thank them and credit them here. This script pulls data from the ORCID and Crossref APIs using libraries ORCID and Crossref developed by Scott Chamberlain, the co-founder of OpenSci, and it is also built on top of code initially created by Clark Iacovakis, the scholarly services librarian at Oklahoma State. He wrote a script for Lyrasis staff to report ORCID adoption by institution and also shared code as part of his working with scholarly literature in R courses. And we've built on that to then do additional things that we need this script to do. And we're super grateful for the head start that work gave us. Next slide. So the R script basically pulls data and then does a ton of data wrangling, cleaning, and repackages it into that CSV for upload to the Tableau dashboard. Not to get too into the weeds, but it retrieves the current ORCID ID profiles for your institution. It then unpacks the works entries from the ORCID ID profiles. For every work with a DOI, it retrieves cross-ref metadata and then unpacks the co-author lists from that metadata. Then it looks through the co-authors for their ORCID ID and any information it can get from their profiles. Then it repackages it all into a flat CSV that can be uploaded to the Tableau template. Next slide. This is just a visual of that, depicting only a single author, but I wanted to give you a sense of the branching involved here. Any institution has many authors, researchers with ORCID profiles, and then those researchers have many works. Those works could have one or more co-authors, and then those co-authors have their own home institutions. So the script sort of goes out and tries to pull back all the data it can so that it can be visualized. Next slide. With the existing ORCID and Crossref data, we are able to visualize a lot of collaborations, but it is not any kind of perfect picture of reality. There are many potential sources of gaps and blanks in the data. The script is continuously trying to fill in blank data for known researchers wherever possible. But even though it does do that, there's still a fair amount of blank data that doesn't show up in the visualization. So the major categories of that would be researchers without an ORCID profile. They're just not in the visualization at all. Sometimes researchers have an ORCID profile, but there's no information in it. Sometimes the information is not public, and sometimes they don't have information in the critical areas that the script is looking at, and namely the employment entry and the works entries. So all of that could result in them being missing from the visualization. Those are the biggest sort of categories of blanks, but two other minor ones that we notice as well. Sometimes users through manual data entry introduce errors into their ORCID profile. I'll show you an example of that in a second. And at the moment, the script is only looking at Crossref issued DOIs, which seem to be the vast majority of DOIs, but it's not looking at, say, DataCite, although that's a future improvement that could be made to the script. So this slide just shows a couple examples of those types of blanks and potential gaps in the data, researchers with no ORCID profile, an incomplete profile. So in the second image here, there's an education entry, there are works entries, but there's no employment entry. So the home institution of this researcher can't be identified. The third image is an example of what seems like a manual data entry error. The wrong institution is entered under employment. And this seemed like a Washington University St. Louis researcher, but the most recent employment entry says University of Washington, and it's been manually edited to be in St. Louis, Missouri. So these are just examples of some errors that the script can't control for. Next slide. So the better ORCID adoption, the more complete ORCID profiles get, the better this visualization will get. So we just wanted to call out some things we think would help. more ORCID adoption, more completion of ORCID profiles, particularly those sections that we're looking at to visualize this data. More consistent ORCID IDs for co-authors from Crossref metadata would be helpful. And there are many, many code improvements that are possible in the script, which is going to be distributed on Lyrasis GitHub and has mentions in the code comments of places where improvements can be made. And I'm sure there are many places I haven't identified that could be improved as well. Next slide. So finally, we just want to leave you with our ideas for how we feel this visualization could be useful right now, even though it's an incomplete picture. It does visualize a lot, and that I think is pretty interesting to look at, especially if someone were interested in drilling down to individual researchers. And we think it can be a tool for encouraging more ORCID adoption on your campuses and encouraging ORCID adopters to really complete their profiles. Internally in our organizations, it could be used to advocate for use of the ORCID member API to authenticate ORCID ID holders and write data directly to their profiles. That could eliminate some errors, and it could also make profiles more complete in a way that's not a burden to the researcher. And then more broadly, we just think it's an example that shows the value of linked data and machine actionable ORCID integrations wherever they're possible. So that's all we have, and we're happy to take some questions, and you're also welcome to contact us after today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Olivia and Nagin. Right now, we have a few minutes in case anybody has questions about this project. I have made it so that people can unmute too, if you'd like to unmute. And I'm also seeing a few questions in the chat, so maybe let's start with those.
Yeah, I can answer Sherry's question in the chat. I'll just repeat it. For the employment, are you using the present employment? How do you know if a collaborator was working at a specific institution at the time of a paper? Yes, we made the decision for a couple of reasons to use the current affiliation of both the home institution author and the co-author in order to treat them equally, in order to minimize blanks. I do have code for finding the co-author affiliations at the time of DOI minting, and that we can also make that available on GitHub. It's not incorporated into the current version of the script that we're actually using to pull the data, but that's something to be aware of. And then Matt has a question in the chat. Do you take employment data from individuals asserting their employment or employers' assertions, such as through the ORCID affiliation manager? We take whatever is the current employment entry in the ORCID profile. So that could have been written by manual entry by the ORCID user. It could have been written by a machine action entry. So it takes both. Yes, it was a lot of work. Thank you.
And there's a lot more work that could be done.
Yes, Nikki and I are working.
Starting point.
Yeah, we're working on a document, to suggest for future fellows, like what are the low-hanging fruit improvements, and then what are the sort of loftier improvements that could be made. Just reading another question in the chat. Is there a script available to pull a list for a group of researchers through ORCID for a specific time period? we have not written anything like that, but I can say that with these libraries, our ORCID and our Crossref, that type of thing is not hard to do. I mean, if you have basic, we've been working in R, so if you have basic familiarity in R, it's possible. And I recommend Clark Iacovac's documentation about our ORCID and his example code, because it's all really can walk you through how to write your own scripts and wrangle this data yourself. If there's something different you want to do with ORCID data, it's all open and very usable.
And there's a question about links to the R scripts that will all be coming in the next month. So hopefully by the new year, you'll have the GitHub shared out where all this information is, as well as a link to the Tableau public publication of the dashboard that you can use as well.
Yeah, that's right. We are still in the process of kind of wrapping all this up and getting it ready for everyone to use. One other thing to note is that we are planning to do a community call at some point in the next calendar year to kind of dive deeper into this. So once everyone has access to the script and to the Tableau dashboard, we'll have a session where we can go through it together. And of course, Paolo and I can do one-on-one calls with people to walk you through or, provide support for that. So we're planning to focus more on this in the next year, but just wanted to give everybody kind of a preview and an update on the project as it stands.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I would just say one more thing about generating the data file. Certainly, you'll be able to see the R script and run it yourself. We have been thinking, just because of the time it takes to run some portions of the script, because of all that branching, we've kind of committed, Sheila and Paolo, to be willing to generate your data file for you if you want. But you're also welcome to run it yourself. So just wanted to point that out.
Awesome. Well, if anyone does have additional questions, please feel free to continue putting those into the chat, even if we don't get to them today. Like I said at the beginning of the call, we'll follow up with you if you have an unanswered question in the chat. So thank you so much, Olivia and Negin, for working with us, for sharing your work today. And this is just like a super exciting project. I know I personally am very excited about it. So thank you again. All right, so we'll move on to the next portion of our agenda, which is some updates. What's new, what's coming up, what do people need to know about? And Paolo, you are starting us off, so let's go ahead.
Great, thank you, Sheila. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Olivia and Negin, for that presentation. It was great, and thank you for all of the work that you've done. So to kind of start with, I just want to give a little bit of reminders coming up. All of these are available also in the agenda document. So if you want to get the links, you can get that from there. So just some reminders. One is don't forget to fill out our annual survey. This will help us plan for events and activities next year. So that really helps us a lot in terms of what we are going to do this coming year. Our second reminder is to please don't forget to nominate your peers who help you or have made an impact on your ORCID related work. Sheila will talk more about our ORCID Community Awards, but we always encourage everyone to nominate anyone that helped you throughout your ORCID related work this year. And then finally, if you are interested, we do have an ORCID US coffee break. So the coffee break is basically a group of people just kind of meeting and chatting anything about ORCID or anything related to what you're working on throughout the year. So you'll have more information on this on the form if you click on that, and we will also share more about this in January. Next slide, please. Now, let's see. Now for our community updates. So this year has been quite exciting. We welcomed 32 new members to our ORCID US community. So with that membership, that brought us to 184 total members. So some new members, we had the California State System, University System, you joining us this year, and of course other institutions as well joining our community. Some of them rejoined the ORCID US community as well. Next slide. And just kind of to see where we are at and what's going on with our growth. So the ORCID US community started in 2018 with about 90 members. And then as the year goes, we've increased that again to 184 in 2022. So that's quite exciting. Next slide. So with that, with 184 members, there are quite a lot of activities conducted by everyone. So this year, we've reached over 325,000 connected IDs via our members API integration. There are currently about 279 total integrations across ORCID US members. So the bar graph here is actually kind of showing you the number of connected unique IDs across all integrations. Furthermore, over 1.4 million total works have been added to ORCID records. With that, almost 70% are journal articles. You can kind of see that big chunk there. That's actually the integrations pushing article information into ORCID records. So in the end, basically, the idea is that the more you write or push data to ORCID, the better it is for the entire ORCID community and the entire ORCID global community. Next slide. Also, one of the things that we did, Sheila and I, over the summer, we did a maturity assessment of all of our members. So the assessment was based on the number of integrations and or type of integration, if any, at your organization. So depending on the integration, organizations fall in one of three categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. With this, what we've found is that about almost a little bit over half of our members are in the beginner stages, and then about 30% are in intermediate, and about 13% are in the advanced stage, where basically you are writing and pushing data into ORCID records. Next slide. So finally, it has been a busy year for our community. We started this year with a new website, so hopefully you were able to actually take a look at that already. And thank you for providing us feedback on it as well. So there's a newly improved website that you can take a look at. We also created a bunch of multiple resources, including blogs, community calls, and webinars. So we've shared a lot of those links on our community discussion forums, and they're also available on the website as well. And all of this really is because of you. So you help us make all of this happen. So we thank you for working with us and collaborating with us throughout this year. And now I'm going to pass it on to our colleague Shauna for additional updates.
Hi, Paolo. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to give you a quick overview of the U.S. federal government policies and activities as they relate to ORCID. Next slide, please. So there are three key initiatives that you as the U.S. ORCID community should be aware of. First is research security. Second is the Nelson Memo, or more formally known as the Public Access Memo. And third is the newest topic of author identity management. Next slide, please. So research security, this has been a topic for a while. There are two key documents to use for reference on this topic, and I've provided them at the links on the last slide of this deck, which we'll be happy to share with you. Next slide, please. So on the last day of the Trump administration, the White House issued this memo, now commonly referred to as NSPM 33, on the topic of research security. This memo is from the White House giving direction to the major science funders, the NSF, NIH, DoD, and DOE, to develop policies and practices to improve research security and to reduce administrative burden. Next slide, please. So NSPM 33 instructs funders to protect against foreign governments interfering with and/or exploiting researchers who receive funding from these U.S. federal funding agencies. Next slide, please. The intent is to maintain open and collaborative research practices with international partners while sharing findings openly so we can all grow together for the betterment of humanity. Next slide, please. So researchers who receive federal research funding or participate in the process of awarding research funding, peer review, they will have to disclose their research affiliations to help agencies identify possible conflicts of interest or researchers who may be vulnerable to exploitation from foreign influence. So I'll get into the details of the disclosure data in a few slides. Next slide, please. So disclosing research affiliations is going to increase the administrative burden on researchers. So to counter this, NSPM 33 instructs the funders to adopt what they're calling digital persistent identifiers. Of course, we know them as PIDs. So to enable to connect systems so the data can flow easily and reduce the administrative burden on researchers. So the list displayed here summarizes the criteria that was listed in the guidance document to NSPM 33. This criteria lists for an organization that can provide DPI or PID services for researchers. And we're pleased to see that ORCID is the only organization that meets the criteria for providing digital persistent identifiers for researchers for research security. So we can expect the major federal funding agencies to implement ORCID into their plans and policies and workflows soon. And my colleague, Brian Minahan, has included links to the documents, so if you'd like to click on those, you can. Next slide, please. So NSF is the agency that's leading and coordinating efforts to respond to the research security memo by harmonizing the forms and implementing digital persistent identifiers to help reduce the administrative burden on researchers. Next slide, please. In the NSF announcement, they also provided a spreadsheet of the data they will ask from researchers when they apply for an award in order to comply with the new disclosure requirements. Next slide, please. Many of these fields can be populated with data from an ORCID record. We haven't received the official notice on how this will be coordinated quite yet, but we're expecting it soon. Specifically January of 23, we're expecting NSF and then also the managers of the Science CV system to provide an update on these specific details. So keep an eye open for that. And please help your researchers by populating their ORCID records for them as much as possible. And it's a great starting point is their employment information. And that would be similar to what the previous presenters, Nagin and Olivia, mentioned. I think if universities can start populating the employment data, it goes a long way to helping everybody. All right, next slide, please. So what does this mean for universities? So first, your researchers that apply for federal funding from the NSF and NIH will be encouraged to get an ORCID ID soon. Second, you can help your researchers by populating their record for them, as we've been saying. Specifically, these 4 fields that I've listed here, they will certainly be included in the update that we're expecting in January. Third is to connect your systems to ORCID's registry so you can synchronize your systems with data that's being provided by the publishers and funders through ORCID. So fourth, watch out for the funder policy announcements. And lastly, connect with the Research Security Office at your university. This is a new development, but every research institution that receives 50 million or more of federal funding is required to have a research security officer, and their officers required to deliver training to campus. Research security was also included in the CHIPS and Science Act, universities are required to host a research security office and this officer who is responsible for research security at the university. Next slide, please. So at this point, the federal government has set expectations, and it's up to the funding agencies to deliver policies and improve systems to meet these requirements. NSF has taken the lead, and just recently NSF announced a research security toolkit, which was actually part of a G7 working group. Digital persistent identifiers for researchers, i.e. ORCID IDs, are included in this toolkit. So the NSF has announced that it's creating a new center for research security to help universities manage this difficult topic. And we're expecting the NSF to announce research security training through a variety of delivery methods in 2023, so keep an eye out for those as well. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now let's shift to the Nelson memo. Next slide, please. So first, the Nelson memo, you've probably heard about this memo. It was released in August of 22. The major point about this memo is making research outcomes publicly available at the time of publication. There's no longer a year embargo on the publication of research findings. Next slide, please. So when you read further into the memo, specifically section 4, which describes the vision for metadata and persistent identifiers to enable public access to federally funded work and to ensure research integrity is maintained, you can see the arrows pointing to specifically to section 4B, which calls for researchers to get a digital persistent identifier, what we call PIDs, and for what was specified as ORCID ID in the NSPM 33 guidance document that I discussed a few slides ago. So the Nelson memo asked funding agencies to instruct researchers to get an ORCID ID, include their ORCID ID in published materials when possible, and to share all persistent identifiers related to the publication with the funder. So we should expect the adoption of persistent identifiers in scholarly communications to increase rapidly. Next slide, please. So the White House has recently clarified the timeline of the Nelson memo, and as it relates to ORCID, all federal funding agencies that fund research, not just the major funders, but all federal funders of research must submit their plans for ORCID adoption by the end of 2024. So they have 2 years, so it should be given lots of time. And then 2 years later, they must update their policies regarding ORCID. And then by the end of 2027, all funders must have their ORCID implemented in their workflows. So we encourage all US researchers to get an ORCID ID today, and it would be ideal for universities to populate these records for your researchers so they're ready when these new requirements take place. All right, next slide, please. So next steps for public access. In 2023, we'll probably get a guidance document similar to what was issued for NSPM 33. ARL is the association that's taken the lead for the academic librarians on this topic, so keep an eye out for any of their events. Federal funders will host events and give you opportunities to submit feedback, so please do so. And of course, publishers and repositories are going to be making a lot of changes to their policies, their infrastructure, and including persistent identifiers in their metadata. Next slide, please. So here's a key list of members on the subcommittee for open science. And I think it's important to point out here that these policies on public access are not political. This development has been coordinated among key agencies that support research over a long period of time. And I learned yesterday that there is a new subcommittee on open science infrastructure that all agencies that fund research, including the NEH, National Endowment for Humanities, are going to be part of. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last and the newest topic is unfortunately on the topic of author identity fraud. Next slide, please. So author identity fraud, or the fraudulent use of a researcher's name, gives credibility to illegitimate research papers or providing peer review of such papers. There was a congressional hearing in the spring on the topic of paper mills and the damage they do to the research community. The issue related to misusing researchers' names of these products of illegitimate research was raised as well. One of the witnesses cited ORCID as one of the tools that can be used to mitigate this issue, and we agree. So expect more to come on this topic in the next year or two. All right, next slide, please. So here are the links to the documents that I've described today. I think the one that'll probably be most interesting to you who coordinate data for your universities will be the, oh, I didn't provide the link to the spreadsheet. I will do that. I will update this link for Sheila, but we'll make sure you have links to everything that I've pointed out today. And next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to shift gears and talk about the work ORCID has been busily doing behind the scenes with various platform providers to make this easier for universities to meet these new expectations. Next slide, please. So Sheila and Paolo have been talking to you about research information management systems for a while now. ORCID is already integrated into the systems listed on the screen. They can all enable your universities to write to ORCID records. If this is something that interests you and your university, you might want to check out a conference called Expert Finder System. They also host wonderful webinars, and we're coordinating a presentation from White House staff to speak at an upcoming event about their policies and how RIM systems are a big part of this work. Next slide, please. So another platform that could help universities meet these new expectations are ERA systems. These are generally used in the Department of Research Administration, or sometimes called the Office of Sponsored Research. None of these platforms are ORCID integrated yet, but we have them ready, and they're just waiting for that announcement from Science EV in January to finalize the details, and then we'll be able to announce which of these platforms are ORCID enabled. So if your university has or is considering any of these vendor platforms, please let them know that you're interested in an ORCID integration. Next slide, please. So the Nelson memo requires providing public access to funded research. So I thought I would also mention that these repositories are integrated with ORCID as well. Next slide. So I used to work in universities, so please know that I have both empathy for you, and I'm also incredibly jealous. This is an exciting time to move forward scholarly communications. So one suggestion for universities is to form a cross-campus working group, and some of you have already done this, including the library, research administration, the new research security officer, and someone from research computing would be good too. Topics for this group to consider, what are some of the new policies the university should consider? Will your university collect ORCID IDs of your researchers? Will your university write to the ORCID records of your researchers? And what about grad students? Which campus systems will be used to meet these new requirements? So there's just some pretty big topics that'll take a good group to figure out for your university. And then next slide. And it's important to remember that ORCID is part of the technical infrastructure enabling data exchange between systems. So researchers and administrators don't have to rekey data into the systems or forms. Okay, Sheila, that's the end of my presentations. Did we want to have a little time for questions?
Thank you, Shauna. I would say if anybody does have questions, put them into the chat. We do have a little bit more to cover. And if we have time at the end, we can answer questions. Otherwise, we'll follow up with anyone who has questions. And just a reminder, the slide deck with all the links and everything will be shared as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Shauna. So I'm going to wrap us up with 2 more topics. The first one is about our ORCID US community fees. So last year at our annual meeting, this time last year, we knew that the ORCID board was investigating ORCID's fee structure and assessing to determine if any changes would be needed. We've come to the time where that work is now done, and there is a new fee structure for ORCID consortia globally that will take effect for our US community in January of 2024. So this is still a year away, but we wanted to make sure that everyone is prepared. So currently, as of right now, all organizations that are ORCID members through a consortium pay the same fee based on the number of members in that consortium. But ORCID and the ORCID board identified some equity issues and sustainability issues with this globally. And so they've made some changes to the consortium fee model in order to lower the barrier for smaller organizations to join ORCID, and also to kind of open the doors for more global regions to participate. And also to distribute the fees a little bit more equitably across organizations to improve the sustainability of the ORCID infrastructure as it continues to grow, especially noting that ORCID has kept their fees flat since at least 2018, which is quite a long time. So it is time for a little bit of a refresh. So now, and for us, again, this will take effect in 2024. So we still have a year to get ready. But ORCID has established a tiered fee model for all consortium members globally based on the number of members in each consortium, with tiers based on the total annual budget of each member organization. So since our ORCID US Community Consortium has well over 60 members, we're in the lowest fee bracket. And so organizations with an annual budget under 10 million per year pay $1,600. Organizations with a budget between 10 million and 1 billion pay $3,200, and large organizations with an annual budget over 1 billion pay $4,300 to ORCID. So these are ORCID's fees. We have already done an assessment of all of our existing ORCID US Community member organizations to get an idea of which tier each of your organizations falls into, and we're going to be sharing that information in early January. So keep in mind that these fee amounts go directly to ORCID, but in order to sustain our consortium, we have to also include an administrative fee that goes to Lyrasis to fund my position and also Paolo's position to provide the dedicated support and all the resources. So for ORCID US Community member organizations, just kind of taking a look at what our fees have been up until the present. From 2018 to 2020, we were at a flat rate of $4,300 a year. So that was $3,000 going to ORCID and $1,300 going to Lyrasis. That supported one full-time position and operational support. In 2021, we increased that Lyrasis admin fee slightly so that we could add a second support position. And so that fee of $4,800 is remaining flat through the end of 2023. So looking at 2024, and Paolo showed earlier that we just keep getting more and more members. We're nearing 200 member organizations. More organizations are continuing to join us. So we're going to be looking to add a third staff position to help with support, as for myself and Paolo, our plates are already very full, which is a good thing. It's great to see that growth. So for 2024, a year from now, the Lyrasis admin fee will be $2,000 per organization. So if you combine that with those tiered ORCID consortium fees that we saw in the chart from ORCID, that leaves us with a small, standard, and large tier, looking at $3,600 for small, $5,200 for standard, and $6,300 for large. I know this is a lot of information to take in all at once right now, but we did just want to make sure everybody is well aware of this ahead of time. So next steps for this, these new fees are listed on our website on the membership page, the orcidus.lyrasis.org/membership. We also created a fee change FAQ document. We thought people might have questions about this, so we tried to anticipate what those questions might be. So please do go to that FAQ document and check those questions. But if you have any additional questions about this, don't hesitate to contact us at orcidus@lyrasis.org. And we're more than happy to work with you, answer your questions, and get ready for this change next year. So in January, we're going to be sending an email out to all member contacts, just reiterating this information to make sure everyone is aware. We'll follow up about it in March as people are getting ready to set their next fiscal year budgets if you're on a June-July cycle. And also over the summer, we're going to include this fee information in all of our member check-in emails. So we will be communicating about this multiple times to make sure everyone's on the same page. But do check the FAQ document and email us if you have any additional questions too. You can also put questions in the chat right now, and we will follow up with you on those. And then I just want to wrap us up. I realize we're at the hour, so if you have to go, that's totally fine. But I wanted to take a minute to talk about our ORCID US Community Awards. While Paolo and I are the dedicated staff for this community, this really wouldn't exist if it wasn't for all of you and all of our member organizations. So we wanted to end the presentation today by recognizing and celebrating this work that you all have done to help build a community of practice around ORCID in the US. So for our 2022 ORCID US Community Awards, the most active individual in the community this year, which is based on our discussion forum, is Peter Mangiafico at Stanford University. And winners of these awards get one of these mugs with your own ORCID ID on it. So that's what the awesome prize is. So congrats to Peter. Most helpful individual this year is Kelly Lockhart at the NASA Astrophysics Data System, basically the Smithsonian Astrophysics Observatory. Kelly was nominated and recognized for sharing her work with the NASA ADS system that is integrated with ORCID, and sharing that experience on a community showcase earlier this year. So thank you, Kelly, and congrats. We did also get several other people that were nominated for the most helpful individual. So I wanted to recognize those people as well. So Christina Miskey at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Yingting Zhang at Rutgers University, Amy Koshofer at University of Cincinnati, Jason Rinaldo at North Carolina State University, Daryl Dykman at Stanford University, and also Tina Delconte at Stanford University. All of these people were nominated and for sharing their experience and being helpful by giving back to the community in that way. So thank you, all of you. Another award category that we have is institutional achievement, and that recognizes all of the institutions that completed a custom ORCID integration over the last year. So all of the institutions listed here successfully built and launched their custom ORCID integration. So congrats to all of you who were involved in these. And a few announcements about our awards. We're making a few changes. We announced these I think over the summer. Our award schedule used to go from basically May to May, but now we're going to do it closer to the calendar year so that we can kind of have a full calendar year and then recognize all the winners at our annual meeting in December. So for 2023, the eligibility period will be from May of 2022 through November 2023. So it's kind of a transition year. And then starting 2024 and after, it will be kind of more on the calendar year. So December 1st through November 30th, we will do our annual meeting in December and the winners will get recognized there. I also want to point out that the most active award category, we're no longer going to be doing that. That was originally based on discussion forum activity, but we've found that that hasn't been the most accurate way to assess who's active or not, especially because you don't have to actually log into the discussion forum in order to contribute to discussions. You can just respond via email. So we're taking that one away, but we're adding a few new categories for the next year. So we're going to keep the most helpful individual, and that's the one where you can nominate other people in the community. If somebody gave a presentation that you thought was really helpful, or if you talked to somebody who helped you figure out how to do your integration or whatever the case may be, you can nominate that person to receive the award. We're also going to keep the institutional achievement, which is institutions who have launched a custom ORCID integration that year. And the new categories are outstanding outreach effort of the year. So when you do the annual survey, you'll notice there's a question that asks you whether you've done any outreach that year. And that's where we will be looking to kind of identify who has the most outstanding outreach effort of the year. And we're going to be recognizing our volunteers. So any individuals who volunteered on a community call or helped to facilitate discussion in a breakout room or just any kind of volunteer work, we're going to recognize all of those volunteers at our annual meeting, and then all the volunteers for that year will be entered into a prize drawing. So we're going to start that in 2023. So keep that in mind if you want to volunteer for something over the next year. And with that said, I do want to take just the last minute here to reflect back on all of our volunteers and say thank you to everyone who has volunteered since we started this community in 2018. I think 2018 was the first year, so we had just a small group of brave individuals that volunteered to share their case studies. But moving on to 2019, we had even more people. I'm not going to read out all the names just for the sake of time, but thank you so much, everyone, for volunteering. I think most of these people gave presentations. 2020, again, it was a very tumultuous year with the pandemic and everything. So I know there was a lot going on. Thank you so much, everyone who volunteered in 2020. 2021, again, we couldn't be doing all of this work without you all. So thank you. And then of course, 2022 is coming to an end. And these are all the people that volunteered this year. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, this community has grown so much, and I think we're doing great things. And we love working with all of